Life Audio.
There was those kind of voices telling us, don't go through this with trying to find a new lead singer. Don't rebrand. Maybe it's time to call it quits. And there were people that we really looked up to and trusted that were telling us this. And I just believed, I don't know if it was foolishness, but I just believe there's still more to be done. There's more songs to be written.
Hello, welcome to the Faith Over Fear podcast, where we discuss powerful truths to quiet anxiety and fear, big and small. I'm your host, Jennifer Slattery, and if you've ever found yourself so overwhelmed, you felt like you were barely hanging on and feared your emotional state might hinder your ability to do your job, raise your kids, or perform certain crucial responsibilities, my discussion today with Chris Rhoman, the guitarist from Sanctus Real, will encourage you and maybe give you the courage to practice necessary self-care, even if that means stepping back from certain roles for a time. Join us after a brief message from our sponsors.
At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than money. It's a way to support the people, causes, and community you love. Because helping you put your faith into action is at the heart of what we do. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Hi, friends. Today's episode is for those of you feeling overwhelmed, like life tossed you into the ocean in the middle of a tsunami without a life vest, and you're simply doing all you can to keep your head above water. And maybe you're eyeing a rescue boat coming your way, but you're afraid to take it for fear of losing your career, killing a dream, or disappointing people who count on you to keep swimming. And I suspect Chris Rhoman from Sanctus Real, today's guest, wrestled with those same emotions and concerns. And today, he's joining us to share how God met him in his season of overwhelm. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
As I mentioned previously, Chris Rhoman plays guitar for the Christian band Sanctus Real and has done so for over 2 decades. The band hit the charts after releasing Lead Me, I'm Not All Right, and Don't Give Up, soon becoming well-known and much-loved musicians on radio stations across the nation. But in 2016, original members Mark Rhoman and Chris Rhoman experienced a windfall of change that shook the foundation of everything they had built. They parted ways with their longtime label partner, their booking agent, and close friend and lead singer, Matt Hammett, left the band to spend more time with his family. And today, Chris is joining us to talk about his journey during that season, how he prioritized his mental health to ultimately keep living out his calling, and how God met him in that. So, Chris, I would love if you could just start us off, share a little about that season.
Wow. It's an honor to share this because I don't get to share the ins and outs of what life has been like being in a band and the stress that comes with it and how maybe that relates to other people in their careers and where they're at. So this is an honor. Thanks so much. Yeah, we've been a band now. Next year will be 30 years.
Wow.
We started when we were teenagers. So it's been well over half my life. And when that got shaken up, it was a season of what comes next and not knowing and just living in that for what seemed like months on end. We had signed our first record deal in 2002. We put out 8 records with Sparrow Records. We were in the middle of another record contract with them when our lead singer, after 20 years, said, I just need to spend more time at home. He was looking to do stuff more as a solo thing, so it wouldn't be as much stress. A lead singer carries a lot of the stress in the band and feels that weight to be the front man. So Mark and I, we agreed. We totally saw it. Maybe we almost saw it coming too a little bit, but maybe didn't expect it to actually happen. We thought maybe we'd have a few months where we take some downtime and figure it out and reassess. But after those few months, he made the decision and we were kind of left figuring out what to do next. At the time, I'm in my mid 40s now, but at the time I was younger and I had a little more energy probably. And I just accepted what was happening, but I still believed that there was more for us to do as a band, which might sound, now I want to say silly, but it's like after 20 years, we put out many songs and people would look at us and probably say, oh, they had their run and it was a good run and it's probably time to close shop. And so there was those kind of voices telling us, don't go through this with trying to find a new lead singer. don't rebrand, don't just, maybe it's time to call it quits. And there were people that we really looked up to and trusted that were telling us this. And I just believed, I don't know if it was foolishness, but I just believe there's still more to be done. There's more songs to be written. And we trusted in that season that we put a lot of faith in what God had already done for the band through all those years. I mean, being signed to a record deal right out of high school, it's pretty unusual as it is. So we saw so many things that transpired in the career of the band up to that point that could only be explained by God's grace. And I felt like, surely if it's in my heart to continue, then it's going to be very obvious the ways that we're supposed to. And if the doors close, and then that's it. But it was a season of time where months, it was about a year transition from the time we knew our previous singer was leaving to when we announced our new lead singer. But we didn't know who that guy was going to be. And thankfully, it was a miracle. We found a guy that was just crazy enough to drop the things he was doing. He was in ministry. He was in a pastoral role at a church over the years. I mean, that's where he had been. That's all he knew. And he led worship at church. He played music, but never sought out trying to do music full time. And when we met him, it was very obvious that he was the right guy. And it was a very organic process. And that's the way I knew in my heart that this was right. This is the path. This is what we're going to do. And from that point, I just kind of put my head down and did the work that I knew needed to happen. And we can look back and say, wow, it worked and it's amazing. But there was so much stress in that season that I carried that I was unaware of. It eventually came to a head and I became very aware of it. But during that season, when you're just trying to figure out how am I going to pay the bills? We had 3 kids and our 4th was on the way when all this happened. And so often when life throws you things like this, they're so unexpected. Most of us, we just kind of keep swimming. We just try to figure it out on the go. And I think that's what I did, thinking I was doing all the right things, but it was taking a toll for sure on my mental health, on my physical body, all the things. I can look back and be very grateful that there was a way through it and we got through it, but I'm not sure I'd be able to do it again exactly the same way.
Yeah. Well, and as I'm listening to 30 years is a long time. 20 years is a long time. 10 years is a long time. And so there had to have been such deep relational connection. And was there like an element of grief as well that was kind of playing into that?
Absolutely. You can get on any streaming service and watch any number of behind the scenes documentaries of bands that have gone through changes and all the dynamics. And we experienced that firsthand. When you grow up as teenagers, your kids into adulthood, we were in each other's weddings. We watched each other have kids. We experienced all this life together on the road for many years there, 150 shows a year plus on the road, spending time together. And there was a lot that played into the stress I carried was partially, I feel like if this thing does succeed without one of my best friends who decided to step out, there was almost a guilt I was carrying for being the one who felt so strongly that it should still continue. I didn't expect that, but there was this crazy amount of guilt I was dealing with once we did start having success in the new iteration of the band. That was a whole thing to talk through with my friend Matt too after the fact. And it took a while. It took years.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I once heard a mental health professional suggest that a lot of our anxiety comes from unprocessed grief. And so I'm wondering, as you're just processing, and let's just acknowledge the weight of providing for a family in and of itself can be hugely overwhelming. And I know listeners probably feel this right now in our economy, but also how much of your anxiety do you think stemmed from unprocessed grief that you needed to work through?
A lot. I think, 80 to 90% of it.
Wow.
And, I didn't realize it. I had friends in my 30s, late 30s, who dealt with anxiety. And I put quotation marks around that because I didn't understand what that meant. I didn't know what it was. Right down to the word itself. What does it mean to experience anxiety? I just couldn't relate. And I'll be honest, it was kind of hard for me not to not have sympathy, but to process I have friends that are on medication for anxiety. Wow, what why? What's going on? What's wrong? Like I thought, surely there's something going on there. Until I experienced it myself, I had no idea all the ways that it manifests itself, the ways it comes out of your body, the way you store it. For me, it all kind of came to a head when we were a few years into it with our new singer, Dustin, and we were on the road. We were back in the grind of playing shows and traveling, and things were working. But it was almost the weight of the success triggered this massive panic attack. And I never dealt with anxiety ever. And it happened on the road. And it was a massage therapist came to the show and was doing massages for all the crew. And right before the show, I got a massage. I knew there was something already kind of happening with my body that wasn't right, but I thought maybe a massage would help. And this deep tissue massage, as soon as my legs were stretched, that's where you store so much of that stress, supposedly. I found out later from the therapist I ended up seeing. It stores down there, like in those deep tissue muscles in your legs and your hips. And it just released like a fire. And I could feel it creeping up from my feet all the way up slowly while I was on the table getting a massage. And it was the most crazy experience I've ever had. And I eventually kind of blacked out. Everything went black. And eventually came to, very long story short, I ended up going to the ER the next day. I had no idea what was happening. I had no idea, but it was such a massive panic attack. And I've now understood and dealt with anxiety since that point. But it was the therapist that I saw, Christian therapist, I should say, that helped me unpack what all that was underneath the surface. I thought it was just the stress of being on the road and carrying what I thought was the weight of the band, but it was so much more than that. It was all the relationships. It was, that fear of hurting somebody, because I cared so much about this, but I didn't want that to supersede my relationships with somebody I spent over half my life with. So I didn't realize that's what it was. I had to process it. It took a while to eventually be okay with it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also thinking, I'm both hearing that there were some things under the surface triggering this, but I'm also hearing just your mental capacity. You already had so much weight between your family and the band. And now, if what I'm hearing correctly, you were kind of driving the bus for the first time ever. Is that correct?
Wow. That's a perfect analogy. And it's funny because our singer, Dustin, I love Dustin. From the stage when he introduces us, he'll say it. Just this last week, we played 5 shows in a row, and he still says, like, and here's Chris, and we call him our driving force. and then he'll introduce Mark, and he'll say, if Chris is our driving force, then Mark is our steady force. And it's true. It's like everybody has their role to play wherever you're at. And sometimes you need to hear that and be aware of it and to be okay with it. Because I think there was part of me like, am I supposed to be the one that picks this up and runs with it? Is it my place? Will I mess it up? And I've been reassured in certain ways over the years, just very certain conversations I can pinpoint, where it's funny because it's usually somebody from my life, like when I grew up. And it's so telling to me. Like I ran into my best friend from childhood on the road because we had our van at the time broke down in Southern Ohio, and we needed a tow and we needed a ride. And I was like, I think my friend lives about an hour away. And I called him up. I hadn't seen him in forever. He's sitting on the sofa. He's like, Chris, what's going on? Yeah, I can come get you. Where you at? And he comes down and meets us. It's just Mark and I, and he drives us up so we can meet one of our wives who's coming down to meet us. And we're just talking. And at some point in the conversation, we're trying to figure out where to go, where to meet at, what restaurant to go to. And my friend Rocky, he just says, well, surely Chris has it figured out. When we were kids, I would just always ask him what we're doing, and I would just be okay with it because he had it figured out. And I'm thinking, I haven't seen this guy in over 10 years. And the way he experienced me as a kid was being somebody who apparently must have had a good sense of what's going on and what we're going to do. And it wasn't like he was saying it in a way like Chris was bossy or Chris this or that. It's like he genuinely appreciated that about me. And I think hearing that from him, like in that moment, was like, it's okay to be the guy who, because it's in you naturally. It's obviously in me, even if I don't see it. And I thought that was so cool that my friend that I grew up with in elementary school said it plain as day, like as if it was just fact. Yeah. And I was just like, And Mark, who was there, was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You just called Chris out. Like, he's totally that guy. And until you have some of that reassurance, you don't know if you should be. And that's kind of where I was at through this whole process, for sure.
Yeah, well, that just reiterates the need to have people who can really see and call out Christ in us and like our strengths and our giftings. I think that can be hugely helpful. Well, I want to talk a little about so I know you stepped away for a month, right? And that must have taken incredible, because I know numbers, right? Like, and just you're like, okay, we're on this train. If we get off, are we going to be able to get back on the train? Like, just talk to me about just what did you wrestle with during that time?
Oh my goodness, yeah. It was actually about 3 months.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at thrivent.com.
Okay.
Where we came off the road, and in some ways it was kind of nice because we had been on the road, I don't want to say nonstop, but all we knew was, at that point in time, the way the music business worked and the way we were plugged into it, we had to be on the road to make a living. There was no income to be had from just writing music and having people consume it at that time. And so it was, like, okay, well, we're home, now what? And we're just kind of waiting and waiting and waiting. And you don't know if you should what you should start planning. And it was difficult. It was really difficult. I would say for sure, I got together with Mark, our drummer, and we prayed. I'll be honest, we prayed about it. And at that time, I still felt like whatever happens, I think this thing's going to be okay. I couldn't explain it to him, but I just felt that way. I just had a peace about it. And Mark, he'll joke about it now, but he was ready to kind of throw the towel in. He was believing some of what people were telling us. You had your run. It's been fun. It's probably time to hang it up. But if I know anything about Mark, he loves playing music. He loves being on the road and meeting people. And it was a hard thing for him. He was depressed. He was honestly depressed when it looked like this was what's going to happen. Like, it's probably going to be over. And when we finally knew what was going to happen 3 months later, he almost didn't want to continue. I had to I don't want to say talk him into it, but he basically told me, like, okay, I'll help you get this thing off the ground for a little bit if that happens. But, I think I do have to be done. And that I understood. I was like, yeah, I get it. There's no guarantees here. There's no guarantees this is ever going to work again in a way that would give us an income, would allow us to produce music. Like you said earlier, we lost our record deal. We lost our booking agent. All these things that we had in place were now gone. And now we're looked at as like this band who's trying to do something that it's probably impossible. Like, look at them go, how cute that they're trying this. Yeah, it was a long period of time there where we had to just kind of block out some of those voices, band together. And, there's camaraderie that we, in finding our new singer, finding that new relationship, there's a lot of life that was given through that. And for the first time in a long time, I felt invigorated by music again. It wasn't just a job. It was, wow, this is an opportunity to have like a rebirth, to start over. And I started to see it more as that than, well, how are we going to pay ourselves? Or how are we going to do this? Or how are we going to have transportation to even make shows, if we can even book shows? It's like all that stuff, you just kind of have to eventually just trust it will work out and do what you feel like you're called to and what you're gifted at. And in that season, for me, it was write music every day. And if you do that, everything else will fall in place. And that was in our industry. It's like, it all starts with a song. And I knew that's what we had to focus on. And that's what we did for that first whole year straight.
Well, I'm also curious. Well, first, I want to just reiterate to our listeners the importance. Like I'm hearing some voices can really tear us down if we listen to those, and other voices can help us to really stay firm in Christ. And so being alert to that, and it sounds like you had a real deep connection with the Spirit to say, okay, this really resonates what my friend said, and I'm going to work really hard not to pay attention to the naysayers. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wouldn't have claimed to be at that point in my life, probably sensitive to those things, spiritually speaking. I think it was just a natural thing for me. I see it for what it is now. Like I understood that God was going to get us through that season. I had no idea what it was going to look like, but I did trust and I had faith. And that's what I built everything on. I had faith that my family would be provided for. I had faith that we would find the right singer. I had faith that he would be able to do this as long as it took without any income to see it off the ground. I had all this crazy amount of faith.
So like for a while there was no income, you're saying?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we should really make a movie about it because it's insane. We started off with debt that had carried over from the previous iteration that we didn't even know about. We had business management that kind of didn't pay attention to a few things there at the tail end. And basically, once we solidified, okay, we have a new guy, we're going to move forward. As soon as we made that decision, I got an email a couple days before Christmas from our business manager.
Wow. Perfect timing,
by the
right?
way, yeah, perfect. By the way, you guys owe this much in taxes. And we're like, why? What happened? And there was no real good explanation given. It was just, here you go. So we're off to the races in debt and all these things without, again, at that time to make an income, we had to be on the road and playing shows. Well, who wants to book a band with some no-name lead singer that already kind of had their run? So when we invited Dustin in, I say he's crazy enough, he believed so much. He would claim it's his wife that believed more.
I love that.
Like you need to have Dustin on here too, because that whole story, everything they've been through. I mean, they've moved at this point almost 30 times since they've been married.
Wow.
And they are beautiful people. They have a beautiful family and they trust like nobody else. Like at that point, like having Dustin come in was exactly what we needed because his faith in it working helped us to have the faith to believe that it could work. And yeah, it's like, okay, here we go, Dustin. Can't pay you. And now we're in debt. Let's go write some songs. It was insane.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also thinking of, again, to our listeners, in those seasons when maybe God is calling them to step away, I would call it like a sabbatical, maybe a spirit ordained sabbatical. It can feel really frightening, but it sounds like that season of pulling away, that God used that to prepare you for future calling, like for what was next.
Yeah. There's so many things at that time that were preparing us for what was going to happen that we had no idea was coming down the road. And I'm so grateful for, the new talents we had to learn, not having a record label. We've done all this on our own.
Wow.
Creating our own record label.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, we never had a gold record before with a label and we do now. And we have all these things we can look at as just a testament to what God has done with these songs and with this band. I tell people all the time, I don't feel like it's my band. I don't claim ownership over it. I feel like it's just this gift that I've been given that I'm trying to do my best to steward as I can. And it's remarkable if you look at the numbers, which I try not to look at the numbers. Honestly, I just try to get into the music and do what I love, which is creating. But it's amazing. It's amazing what God has done and it's still doing. And, we're still putting out music and it's just it's so humbling to still be in a place where, I have a son who's 16 years old, the same age I was when I started the band. And it's pretty wild. His friends will ask for Sanctus Real t-shirts. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. I would have never thought. I'm the dad who these kids are at least into the music. I'm like, what more could I ask for? Like our fans span that whole gamut of teenagers all the way up. to my parents, and it's just amazing that we have that kind of a platform, and we do take it seriously in the lyrics we write and the things we try to pursue. So it's really not I don't claim it's my band. I just try to do my best with it.
I love it. Well, so let's bring us back in your therapy. What are some tools? Are there any particular tools that your therapist gave you to when you're maybe beginning to feel a little overwhelmed or stressed?
Yeah, the one thing I can remember the most is focus on your breathing, slow things down. There was, I don't know what it was that caused all that to happen in a physical sense. My body definitely took a long time to recover, and I couldn't think straight. Bright lights affected me, loud noises affected me. I came off the road after that episode for about 2 months and had to recover. And I was meeting with this therapist. He was giving me breathing exercises. He was telling me to journal. He was telling me to drink lots of water and watch my diet and to maintain healthy sleep habits and to dig into my relationships, my wife in particular, and really to slow things down. And I think I needed that at that point. There are things he helped me visualize from the way that I was experiencing things, and he would really pull it out like, okay, well, explain to me what you see when you think about these things. And those kind of exercises, I'm not sure what you call them, but they were eye-opening for me to understand that a lot of times there's these deep feelings connected to just these memories that you don't even know are there. And when you're forced to explain visually what you're seeing when you're thinking of these memories, it's eye-opening how you explain that to somebody and the questions they ask from that point to really dig out like, okay, this is probably something we need to talk through and figure out what's going on. So there's a whole lot. And that at this point now, this was before the pandemic. So it kind of prepared me for the pandemic when this happened, all this exercising and diet and just the breathing especially. And everything's gotten way better, but I still deal with anxiety in a way that is probably just more typical. And before, like I said, I had no idea or the concept of what that was like. So
yeah. Well, now I want to shift a little. So tell me about Mended, your song Mended. Like, did your experience contribute to that song at all?
Yeah. The song's called On the Mend.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Yep. You're good. It's a song that I love because we try to be honest in our lyrics. And sometimes you have to have things a little more straight down the road, a little more narrow, I guess. Since we don't have a record label, we can kind of do what we want, which is beautiful, without outside forces saying things like, oh, this won't work at radio or this.
Interesting.
Which is really, at this point in our lives, is very freeing. And, we have lots of friends. We do work with record labels. We work with publishers mainly. So we have so many friends that are in the business that continue to help us. But the decision at the end of the day is ours, lyrically and the songs we choose to record. And On the Mend was just a really cool track. We were with a writer. He had this track and a rough track of what ended up becoming the song. And for whatever reason, it just kind of hit me out of the gate, the first line of the song. And because it hit me, it made me think, oh, maybe it could be about this stuff that happened to me. But the first line of the song is, I thought there was something wrong with me. I did my best, did everything that my counselor said. I put in the work, all these things, but it still didn't help.
I thought there was something wrong with me. I did my best, tried everything that my counselor said. I put in the work, talked to myself, checked all the boxes, all of the steps. Still didn't help. And after head fakes and bad breaks and mistakes and heartaches, when you came, it changed. And all the deep hurts and deep wounds, in time they led me to you, just you.
And eventually we wrote this song from the perspective, not just from my perspective, but from someone who is struggling with their mental health, who might not know Jesus, might not know the peace that comes from knowing Jesus. And for me, my perspective is I went through this crazy episode. I met with a counselor for the first time in my life. He gave me helpful things, But I realized for myself, like those things are great, but it doesn't solve the heart issue that really is the fact that I believe that the only grace sufficient enough to cover all these things is what Jesus offers us. And so that song became that kind of declaration for us as a band to say, all these things you can experience in life are going to happen. There are ways you can get help here physically from other people. And there's things that do help, relationally. But the ultimate number one relationship that still for me carried me through all of it was my relationship with Jesus. And that's what the song On the Mend is really all about.
Amen. And I would also suggest, like, part of what Jesus does in our lives is he leads us towards tools as well, healthy tools and therapists and deeper relationships that are helpful. And I want to end our conversation. I was really encouraged. I read that the band is deliberately prioritizing the message of hope. And why do you feel like that's so crucial now, especially?
Yeah. So I think what we've seen at our shows and what people are telling us is it just seems to be this sense of hopelessness that people are experiencing. They're coming to these shows seeking out hope. I think we've seen it because we've been doing music for so long, and the landscape has changed socially. We tie a lot of it to social media, honestly, is what we feel is one of the driving things that is causing people to compare themselves to others and to feel hopeless in their situation. Yeah. So the songs we write, we try really hard to point people to what we believe is the ultimate source of hope. And that when people tell us, just this last week, we were at a show, this woman never heard of Sanctus Real. She stumbled upon a YouTube video, a music video that we made during one of the hardest seasons of the band, which was for the song called Confidence. And she explained in detail in this meet and greet, and this is a middle-aged woman telling me how much the music video just spoke to her and offered her like a sense of peace and hope. And she was telling me like the way that visually it cut from this to that and how it went with the music. Like she was giving me a play-by-play of this music video. And it was actually one of the first music videos I actually produced and shot myself.
Wow.
And so she's telling me all this, not knowing I'm the one who did it. And she's literally saying, I don't know who did that video, but it brought me here tonight. And it was humbling, like it was a miracle. And I just think like, wow, like God can use anything in a season where you feel hopeless and you're just doing what you feel like you're called to do. You're doing what you believe is the right thing. Like years later, that moment, that song, that thing you did can cause somebody to be like, I want to know more about this hope. I want to go see what this is all about. I hope that she experienced it at the show that night. But that's a beautiful thing to get to be part of, because we hear it all the time. There's just a lot happening in the world right now. And there's so much information that we're fed. We have another song we put out a few years ago during the pandemic called My God Is Still the Same. And that was written out of a time of just asking the question, like right now, there's all this information of just hopelessness and there's so much devastation. There's so much uncertainty in the world. But we believe as believers, like, this isn't unprecedented. This isn't something new. And we just felt so strongly that the platform that we had been given to write music about hope led us to ask that question, like, what's really changed? When did God break his promise? Well, he never has. There's so many things we can look back at throughout history and see God's hand on as believers. And so why should our faith be any different in that moment? I mean, these are big questions. I mean, it's a scary time. Absolutely. But, I feel like we've been given a platform to hopefully speak some truth, give people hope. And those are the songs we see resonate the most with our fans right now. I love the opportunity to share about our music because somebody who's never heard of Sanctus Real can dig in anywhere. There's over 100 songs out there for you to check out. Yeah, I love when people discover us when they're not even trying to, like that woman who came to the show, who saw a music video,
And was just what she needed. I love that. So with that being said, what's next for you?
Yeah, we're playing shows throughout the summer. We're planning a fall tour. Next year is 30 years for the band. So we're in the process of planning some special stuff for next year. Yeah, so always putting music out. We have a couple of new songs we put out already this year. We have another one coming next month. That's one of our favorite songs we've written. I'm really excited about. That's coming out the end of June. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all that in the show notes along with a link to your Spotify and all that. So thank you. This was such a great conversation. I personally love your music, so I'm really excited to hear what's coming next. So that's awesome.
Thanks so much. Thanks for listening.
I'm always encouraged to hear about mature Christ followers who struggle, but also find hope in Jesus and through the support of his children. It's encouraging to know we're not alone in our overwhelm, but also we're not stuck in it. The Lord is constantly working to bring us to a place of increased freedom. If you haven't already done so, I encourage you to subscribe to this podcast. Then you won't miss a single episode. And we've got some great ones coming up. We'd also love to hear from you. Reach out to share any topic ideas you'd find particularly helpful. And make sure to rate this podcast. That encourages me and Carol and helps others to find our content. Until next time, may you live as one who truly has been set free.
Are you seeking to deepen your faith and embrace your identity in Christ? Then tune into the Bought and Beloved Christian podcast hosted by me, Kirby Kelly. Join me each week as we dive into God's Word, explore its truths, and learn how to live out our faith boldly. Whether you're new to the faith or looking to grow closer to God, the Bought and Beloved podcast offers insightful discussions, heartfelt encouragement, and practical advice for your spiritual journey. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform, and let's walk this faith journey together here on the Bought and Beloved podcast.